Long ago, in a majestic mountain region, where towering cliffs rose so high they covered the sky, there stood a gigantic stone mountain blocking the only path leading to the river of the entire land. Its steep rock walls, sharp like the fangs of a beast, forced every animal to travel dozens of miles just to reach water. Every dry season, under the scorching sun, countless creatures collapsed from exhaustion along the way, their breathing fading beneath the burning heat. At the foot of the mountain, inside a barren crack in the earth, lived a tiny colony of ants. The ant colony was crowded and hard-working, but their lives were filled with hardship. Every search for food required them to crawl across jagged rocks, along endless paths filled with danger. Some young ants never even had the chance to grow up, swept away by rushing water or taken by forest birds. One sweltering afternoon, while the colony was struggling together to drag a grain of rice home, suddenly, a massive boulder rolled down from above. The ground trembled violently. The crash echoed like thunder. The ants scattered in panic. Fortunately, none of them were crushed, but the path back to their nest had been completely blocked by the enormous rock. The Ant Queen stood silently before the cold wall of stone. An old ant, its back bent by time, let out a heavy sigh. We are far too small. This mountain has stood here for hundreds of years. How could we possibly change it? Many other ants lowered their heads, their eyes filled with despair. Those words felt like a crushing weight upon the entire colony. Compared to the overwhelming power of the mountain, the ants were nothing more than grains of sand beneath the endless sky. That night, while every creature in the forest had fallen asleep, the Ant Queen climbed alone to the top of the highest rock. She gazed toward the distant river, where moonlight shimmered across the water. A longing for freedom and hope quietly flickered inside her heart. After a long moment of silence, the Ant Queen returned and spoke with a calm but unwavering voice. If we cannot keep walking around it forever, then we must carve our own path. The entire colony stirred with whispers. One young ant asked nervously, "But how, Your Majesty? We are so small." Another interrupted, its voice full of doubt. "Even elephants and tigers cannot move the mountain. How are we any different?" The Ant Queen looked at each of them, her eyes burning with determination. That is true. One ant alone cannot accomplish anything great. But if thousands of us carry away one grain of dirt each day, one tiny piece of stone, then one day a path will appear. Those words left the colony in deep silence. No one spoke. Yet inside every ant, a seed of hope began to grow. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight slipped through the cracks in the rocks, the smallest ant slowly stepped forward. It bit tightly onto a grain of sand and quietly carried it away. A second ant followed behind, then a third, then a fourth. Before long, an endless line of ants stretched across the ground, flowing like a river of determination. Day after day, the ants worked tirelessly, carrying grains of dirt, chipping away at the smallest cracks in the mountain. Then, the rainy season arrived. Violent floods swept away all their hard work. The dirt and stones vanished. Everything returned to nothing. And yet, when the floodwaters receded, the ants quietly began again from the very beginning, without a single complaint. From high above, the forest birds laughed mockingly. What fools! They will never move the mountain in their entire lives. The monkeys swinging through the trees shouted with ridicule. Look at them. They really think those tiny legs can change an entire mountain? The ants continued working in silence. They did not argue. They did not explain. Only the steady rhythm of countless tiny footsteps echoed on. Time passed, and beneath the mountain, a narrow path slowly began to form. At first, it was only wide enough for a few ants to crawl through. But little by little, it grew wider. Rabbits carefully began using the trail. Then deer, and other small animals as well, started following the new path. Then, one day, a massive storm raged for many nights without end. Water rushed violently down from the mountaintop, following the exact path the ants had patiently carved. The sound of collapsing earth and stone thundered throughout the forest like a mighty symphony. When dawn finally arrived, the animals of the forest stared in disbelief. A huge mountain pass had opened through the towering wall of rock. At last, the path to the river had been cleared, bringing fresh, cool water flowing through once more. The birds who once mocked them now stood silent. The monkeys lowered their heads, filled with shame. And the ants continued their daily work, carrying tiny grains of sand, as though nothing had ever changed. They understood better than anyone. Miracles are not born from overwhelming strength, from the kind of willpower that refuses to stop in the face of hardship.
The story of the ants moving the mountain teaches us that no one is too small to create change. Great success does not come from sudden strength, but is built through perseverance every single day. When people learn to unite, remain determined, and refuse to give up in the face of hardship, even the impossible can eventually become reality. At the same time, the story reminds us not to mock the efforts of others too quickly, because it is often quiet persistence that creates the greatest miracles over time.